Thank you for listening to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. I'm a musician, producer, Ableton certified trainer, educator, and we're closing in on our 300th episode on the show. If you've been enjoying the show, I'd love it if you could leave a review. That helps get the word out. And today, the show is supported by my Music Production Club, which you can check out at brianfunk.com/MPC. This is how you keep up with my latest work and join a community of like-minded musicians and producers. It's only $6 a month and cheaper if you join for longer periods of time, and you'll get my newest works as soon as they're released. They usually go for about $15, so you're saving there right away. And once you join, you get access to a whole bunch of other stuff that you can download right away. My Ableton Live Pack archive, which is 200 plus Ableton Live Packs. My classical guitar Ableton Live Pack, the Ghost Ableton Live Pack, toy synths, dollar store keyboard, Dad's Dinosaur Friend Ableton Live Packs. I've got an Ableton Live Pack of arrangement templates, a live performance Ableton Live template. You get the music production exclusives live pack. We've got sample packs that come with the club, and you also get my educational materials, including the 5-minute music producer, which is 365 daily songwriting and music production activities, my live performance in Ableton Live video course, my What Bob Ross Teaches Us About Music Production book, the Creating Excitement video course. And there's more. There's also a community of like-minded producers. Making music is hard, so it's important to build a network of people to support and help along the way. You can join our monthly live meetings to discuss music making and connect with me and other members of the club. We've got a Discord, which is really a great way to share your music and meet new people. It's going to get really exciting in January because we're about to start the January Challenge, which is to make a short piece of music every single day during the month of January. It's really encouraging to see everyone else trying to make their music every day and sharing their thoughts, listening to each other's songs. I love it. It's so inspiring, and inevitably lots of great things come out of it. We're also getting ready to wrap up our fall 2022 compilation, and there are other challenges that we do during the year that you can get involved with to help accelerate your music production. The Music Production Club is my way of getting as much of my work to you at the lowest price possible, and it's a community where we can share our love of music making and help each other through its challenges. It's really my pride and joy. I really love every single one of you that is a member, and I hope that you'll join us to make the Music Production Club even better. You can join at brianfunk.com/MPC. Hello, welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. On today's show, I'm with Matt Jones. And Matt Jones is a musician, songwriter. He's out in California. And I met Matt through my Berklee Online class. He was in the class, and great student, a lot of fun in our live classes. And just over the fall, he put together a songwriting and production retreat. I got the little pamphlet here for the speaker series. He had speakers come on, and he had a whole bunch of people come over and write music and collaborate together for a week. And I got to speak to them in the beginning, and it was a lot of fun. There was a great energy in the room. And, you know, knowing Matt, I know he brought that energy himself there. And he's got a great spirit of sharing, giving his energy, and enjoying the creations of others. And I really wanted to talk to him about this retreat and what it was like. It just seemed really cool. I was sad I couldn't be there myself. But happy to get a chance to talk to you. It's nice to have an excuse to talk to you again, Matt. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Brian. Thanks again for having me on, and I really appreciate being here. And you're doing great work. It's great to hear your podcast and everything else you put out.
Thanks, man. You've done great work yourself. I always loved what you did in our class, and again, like I said, your energy was so good, and that's such an important thing. You know, when you're working with others and when you're pursuing like any kind of creativity, you know, creative drive or whatever it is, to have that energy. And, you know, that's definitely like something striking about you. So I'm glad to have you on the podcast.
Well, thanks. We're in the Mutual Admiration Club.
Yeah. Hey, that's a good place to be sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of think you have a little bit of an interesting story too for, you know, getting into music, right? Like, going for another degree and pursuing it as much as you have. maybe it'd be cool just to kind of hear the story a little bit.
Sure, sure. Well, going back to the very beginning when I was an embryo, no. Well, I've always had a love for music, which is sort of a trite, almost throwaway thing to say, because I think, most people like music. But I dabbled in music as a student, as a middle school student, and eventually got into athletics, and that I had a choice to make, and so I kind of, music went into hibernation for me. But a couple decades ago, I became a father, and I had this notion that my kids should fall asleep to the sounds of acoustic guitar, just very, quiet acoustic guitar. I just felt that was nourishing in some way. And so I, picked the guitar back up and kind of plucked around and, figured out some old songs and did that for, they're grown now, but that kind of sparked a little, I remember why I like doing this. And then sort of the turning point, though, was about 6-7 years ago, is I was asked by a counselor, and he just said, if there's one thing that you could do in life that you were guaranteed you wouldn't fail, what would that be? And immediately, I didn't have to think 2 seconds. I'd go, music, no question. And that little question he asked me sort of changed my life, because I started thinking about, well, how could I fit this into my life? And I started looking at local colleges here and music programs, and I stumbled on Berklee, and it just seemed like a perfect fit. And it was one of the best decisions I made in my life. So I'm an eye surgeon during the day, which is a very non-creative endeavor. It's a great job, and I love it. But at the same time, it's a certain set of skills and a certain approach that is sort of one slice of human expression. And I was
slice?
really, yeah. Pardon the pun. Thinking a slice of a pie. Yeah, my joke is, my mom told me never to get around eyes with sharp objects. So of course that's what I went into as a career. but I've really felt fulfilled, and it's really helped me feel more like a complete human being, because I'm able to draw on skill sets that are completely different than that of a surgeon. And I also was at a point in my life where I wanted to be on that learning curve. I really enjoy being on that learning curve. And early in my surgical career, you're on that always as a student and a resident and a young surgeon. But eventually, it's like anything else. You do something a long time, and you're not on that slope of the learning curve. So I really wanted to take on something I sucked at and tried to get better at. And so that was it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And I'm continuing to be on that learning curve. And the more you get into music, the more you realize that the learning curve kind of never ends, which is beautiful. It's a great thing. It's a great thing if you're into the journey of life, because music holds the promise of a journey that will be with you as long as you want to go down that path.
That's pretty cool, because I think a lot of people kind of like stop. They don't like to go into things that they suck at or they're new at, is probably a better way to put it, right? But it's, I think you're allowed to be that way when you're younger, when you're a kid and you're trying things out, you're a teenager or whatever. But there does become a point where it's kind of like it gets frivolous. Like, oh, you're learning the guitar now? Like, why are you doing that? Like, whatever it might be, anything. You get a kayak or something, and it's like, oh, okay, you don't do that. But it's so important for keeping the mind going and staying curious and excited about things. It's cool to hear that, because I've heard it so many times. I'm too old. I should have started when I was a kid, or, I don't do that anymore. I'm no good at that. And we just kind of box ourselves in that way.
Yeah, I think it's one of the benefits of being a little older. I'm 56, and one of the benefits of being older is that you do get some perspective. And when I was in college, I swam in college and swam for UCLA, and we had great swimmers. A third of our team were Olympians. We had gold medalists and world record holders. And the point of this is that at that time, our lives and our focus was completely on the performance of, in the water, how fast you were going. It was all about that performance, and everything was geared toward that. But when I get together with my teammates now, nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about their, great races or how, it's all about the journey and the stories that we shared in together. And you realize that that's the true gift that you have from those experiences is that journey. And so when I thought about going into music, or as I got into music, it's really been helpful for me to not have the mindset that I'm only going to be happy when I achieve X, and I'm on this journey toward X. And when I get to X, that's happiness. I realize that now is the journey, and now is the fun time, and now is the fulfilling time. And it's a very it's kind of a Buddhist way to think about it, but I think there's a lot of benefit to that, in the sense that I enjoy what I do every day, even the frustrations and the, getting stalled, and you realize it's just part of the tapestry of the journey, and so that's helped me quite a bit.
Yeah, because that goalpost is always moving anyway, right? Like as soon as you reach something, it's not enough, and you want more, and the next one is even further down the road than the last one. So it's a tough thing to keep. If you tie your happiness up in that, especially something like music, like you said, it never ends. There's no you know it all now. Congratulations.
Right.
Even like you get your degree, right? It's like, it's almost like, okay.
That's right.
Keep going.
That's right. That's another great thing with experience is I realized from, my degrees that I got back in my 20s is that you get your degree, and at that stage you think, okay, I got it. I but you realize later I knew nothing at that stage. It's just kind of, a degree really just prepares you to learn is how I look at it. You learn how to learn, and now you're ready to learn when you have your degree.
Right. Yeah. That's a good way to think about it. I think we're sold the fantasy or the lie, maybe even in school, like, oh, once you get your degree, then you get your job, and it's like, not really. It's not. And I think especially in something like music, where, it's not, you don't even actually need one to do anything with it. Eye surgeon's a little different. I think it's good that we have some sort of vetting process, if nothing else, but you need to know certain things. But you can be, a kid that just opens up his laptop and finds GarageBand and throw together something, and that's music. You're doing it.
Right.
Yeah, but that's
absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool, and that's a great attitude to take towards it.
Yeah, thanks. For me, there was, in the soul searching part of it, it's like, why do it if you're not going to love every minute of it? And I have. Well, I can't say I have loved every minute, but because you hit these, but overall, it's been wonderful.
Did you hit any kind of resistance from others? Anyone like, what are you doing that for? What's the point?
Not really. It was something initially that was a very personal decision and a personal journey. And again, going into it, not knowing where it was going to lead and if it was going to lead to anything. And it was something that I just felt it was something just to kind of keep to myself, more just because I wanted the space to sort of explore and see what it could become without others weighing in on it. But as time has gone on, I've felt a lot of support and a lot of it's just been overwhelmingly positive. And people, I think most people are intrigued by music too, and that's sort of what got me into music. Music is kind of this magical mystery. And I remember as a kid that you'd hear a song that would move you, and I was very curious about that magic. Why and how is this making me feel this way? And it's making me feel happy, and I want to hear it again. And there's this one part I want to hear again, and I think a lot of people have that feel that mystique around music, and in particularly creating music. I think folks who have dabbled, even accomplished technical musicians, still have that mystery of creating music. I have a friend who's a great guitar player, and but just says, I can't write for the life of me. I just don't understand that process, and so that to me, understanding that mystery, I think. A lot of people have that. And I think that most people relate to music as a language. And so I felt a lot of support and a lot of curiosity and a lot of vicarious sharing of the journey type of sentiments that were directed toward me. So, so positive.
Yeah, that's good. Sometimes I think, like you said, you kind of did it on your own, and people might have something to say when you're thinking about starting, but once you're going, it's like, oh, well, that's what you're doing. I guess that's what you're doing. They kind of, sometimes it's better to just go, and not, survey the lay of the land first and have people come up with excuses for you to not do it.
Yes, exactly. And it was a great time to have that in my life too. I needed a change. I needed something refreshing and new. I was, just from the psyche of it, helped me as well. So there are many facets that really helped me turn a corner.
Yeah. I have a similar vivid memory of being a kid. And I think I went into my room maybe like with some kind of little attitude, mad at something, and put on music loud. And after just a song, I was like, I'm not mad anymore. I feel different. Like, what was that? How did that happen to me? And it created this kind of like you said, this magical mystery of it. Like, this thing just changed me completely. I'm different now. And that was long before I ever started making music, but it was definitely a moment where I realized, oh, look at this.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. And I think the latest research has shown that if you're if you're happy, happy songs tend to make you happier, and are neutral, it makes you happier. But if you're sad, strangely, maybe sad music makes you happier, and listening to happy music when you're sad doesn't make you happier. And so there's something that music does to connect to our emotions and who we are at a very deep level. And we're still, as a species, trying to understand that completely.
I've had experiences of like music that was great to be depressed to. It felt great to be depressed to this song, you know, like some like old Radiohead songs are just like, oh.
Yeah. Morrissey, you know.
Yeah, right. Like
Smiths, right.
Like
Yeah.
the funny lyrics of like blowing up and getting hit by a bus, you know. It's like,
Right.
yeah, that's great.
I feel you.
But also like that, just like visceral, it's almost like violence actually, of bashing on the drums, playing loud music. And you know, there's like a certain amount of aggression that I think we all probably have baked into us naturally.
Right.
That is probably why we're here, because our ancestors were aggressive enough to survive and all of that. So that's trickled down, and it's always been a very healthy release for me, where you can play your heart out. You're sweating, you're tired, and you're just like, yeah, like what a relief that was to do that, to go out to play, to just make all that noise and feel it through your body. You know, a really healthy way to deal with all of that stuff that sometimes can otherwise come out in some pretty negative ways.
Right.
I wanted to ask you about the songwriting retreat, which is such a cool thing. And it's like, I think a lot of people have this like dream, you know, I've always had it myself, where like go away for a while, and like just the whole point of that going away was to just make music. And you put this thing together, and with people, from what I understand, don't know each other, that are
Correct.
going to be like strangers coming together. And there's a big issue too, in that there's so much vulnerability in playing music and sharing it and opening up, and you know, we're talking about all this like emotional stuff, so it's sometimes tough to do that with complete strangers. So how did this all come about?
Yeah, well, it wasn't planned as a retreat. You know, it started out just I had a couple friends, musicians. One of them was a fellow Berklee student with me, and in fact, Emma Worthington. She's a great, check her out. And Emma Music. She's an amazing vocalist, But Emma and her friend Holly came down from Portland. They drove down in the spring, and just to hang out and record some things. And we really enjoyed it. And we talked to some of our other classmates and like, hey, we should do this. Let's do this with a couple more people in September. And I'll take some time off and. We'll just hang out and we'll do some social things. We'll eat some great food. We'll make music and just hang out. It'll be a fun time. And from that point, it just kind of evolved where there was a couple other people that I thought, oh, this person might be great to join. And it's like that old, you're probably too old to remember, or too young to remember this old commercial. It's like, I think it was a shampoo commercial. It's like, and they told two friends, and then they told two friends, and so on and so on. But before I knew it, it was, half a dozen, 15, 16 people. And I had committed early on that, hey, you come down here, I'll house you. I've got a couple places people could stay, and, I'll have food. And so it turned into this bigger thing, and people were coming in. People came in from Nashville and Los Angeles, Ireland, Las Vegas, all over Portland, and it ended up that I realized very quickly that, this is something where people are taking basically a vacation, their vacation time to come down here for a week for this event. And so suddenly I was like, my worst nightmare would be for people to get down here and say, I can't believe this is a complete waste of my time. So with that in mind, I thought, okay, how can I structure this so it's going to work? And the first thing was just a general philosophy of the retreat was, number one, I wanted it to be very low key and low stakes, in the sense that, hey, we're going to come together, we're going to bring different skill sets, and but it's low stakes. The goal is to enjoy this time, to write some music, to make some new connections and new friends. So that was one aspect of it. Another aspect was that I wanted to create I wanted to clear everything else in life out of the way. And I think this is something that most people who are in music can relate to, is that I think all of our hearts really desire this protected time that we can just get together and make music. And we don't have to worry about the laundry, or we don't have to worry about, the whole list of life things that seem to come up and derail our creative energy. And so I spent a lot of time planning, even things like, just meals and transportation, and making sure that, I had all, that I just had everything that human beings need to just concentrate on the music. And so that part of it, I think, really helped the process, because participants were able to come down and just not worry about anything else. And everything was there, instruments, all the gear. And the other goal was to push the process along so that by the end we had something tangible. Even though it was low stakes, the goal was within a week, and it actually was less than a week, it was 5 days, was to be able to go from having nothing and a group of people who don't know each other to, in the end, have tracked the music that we needed to have a final product. And so that was so that's a lot. That's a lot of words, but that was the general overview.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like the perfect fantasy that, like, we all dream of. It's funny when you mention the life things that get in the way of the laundry, like the dishes. Sometimes I think those get welcomed into the picture, because if I'm going to make music, it's like my house is totally clean. I've found every excuse I can. I better do the dishes, they can't wait for some reason, and I got to do this and that. And it's like I get to it when I've exhausted every other escape route,
Right. Yes. I call that productive procrastination. Mm-hmm. And the productive you can put in quotation marks, because it's the same way. It's like, well, I got to do this, and look, we all have ebbs and flows to our creative energy, right? But I wanted the space to be there where if someone needed a break, then they took a break, and I even had a bedroom that was a dedicated bedroom, just if someone needed a power nap in the afternoon, every now and then, we get to this, you're just not in the space, you've been working hard, you just need a break. And, I tried to even provide that just so nobody felt trapped. I wanted everybody to feel very comfortable and free. So that but yeah, that productive procrastination thing is, yeah, I think that I share that.
Yeah.
It's sneaky. It is. Yeah.
It's sneaky because it does feel like you're doing something, and you probably are, like I did clean the house, like that's good.
Right.
But, when I look back on my day or my weekend or whatever amount of time it was that I thought I was going to have to do all this stuff, I don't want to just know that like the dishes got done when I could have just thrown them in the dishwasher.
Right.
All those kinds of things. So
Right.
that's good that you took that away. How did you manage to, I mean, I'm sure the people that were there were willing, obviously they took the time and they're there, but how did you manage to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit and kind of help people out of their shell a little bit?
Yeah. Well, one way was getting as much information to people as early as possible about the retreat and what to expect. And one blessing and curse that prevented me from too much procrastination was that because this evolved from another idea and wasn't sort of something that was sketched out from the ground up, the weekend before, so this started Monday, on Monday at noon, and the weekend before, right up to late Sunday night, I was at a EDM festival in San Francisco that was a great new festival, and I went with my daughter and one of the participants, and it was, and so I'm realizing that, look, I'm going to be getting back from San Francisco, which is 2 hours away, in the middle of the night, and grabbing a few hours of sleep, and then we're hitting the ground running. So I kind of had to have my ducks in a row, and I tried to convey as much of that to the participants ahead of time as possible. So, for example, I once I had the list set of who was coming, I got bios from everyone. I shared everybody's bio with everyone else so that they could see the skill sets. And we had, some pure songwriters. We had artists, performers who, didn't write, some that did write. We had some people who did production but didn't perform. And it was a way, I think, to sort of break the ice a little bit, so that people had faces behind the name. They could at least see the photos. And even an itinerary just of, hey, this is sort of what we're planning to do. Excuse me. And letting people know sort of the time parameters too, what to expect. And again, no one was trapped. And if someone had to, I had one participant from Santa Cruz, which is not too far away from here, about an hour. And look, if you need to cut out and do anything for a family thing, or for some people had work obligations where they had to take a little time to go up to and do something virtually by Zoom or work on something. I'm kind of starting to ramble now, but anyway, that was sort of the initial thought. And then so I think when everybody got here, everybody was excited and knew what the lay of the land was. And the first event of the retreat was just a sort of a mixer, where it was kind of a meet and greet, and then we all sat down and just went around and had everybody briefly introduce themselves, tell what their skill set was. We divided into some teams, and then I did some creativity exercises as well, which were just to try to spark some creative thoughts. And I think what that did was it allowed people to sort of, and a lot of it was sort of, one thing I did that I didn't really figure out the finish, the finish part of this exercise, or the end point of this exercise, I should say. But what I did is, okay, we're going to do a songwriting idea where everybody's going to write down anonymously on this piece of paper a story that you wouldn't tell someone else. We all have a story. Oh, I can't share that with it. Or maybe you've shared it with, just the closest people because it's vulnerable, but it's an interesting story, right? And I thought, well, people aren't going to want to do this, but I made it anonymous. And then I thought, okay, I could kind of make it doubly anonymous by, there's that old, two truths and a lie, right? Where it's the drinking game where you tell two truths about yourself and one lie, and people have to figure out what the lie is. So I said, okay, actually tell two stories, one that's your true juicy story and another one that's made up, and you're never going to have to reveal which is which. And then everybody just, crumples these pieces of paper into a ball. We put them in the middle we throw them in the middle of the floor. And then I put them in a bag, and then we got going in the week. We never came back to that bag. But I think that those things just started to kind of break down, at least in people's minds, just open them up a little bit. And, people became very fast friends, and I knew everybody, but most of the people didn't know anyone else in the group, or maybe one person knew one other person. We also talked. I also did. I didn't want to come across as paternal or the school teacher. Hey, you've got this skill as a school teacher, I know, but you kind of also want to set the tone. And I just said, hey, this is something where it's low stakes. Everybody here has a vital role. Nobody is we couldn't create what we're going to create without every single person here, and everyone's valued. But it was a good group, and I didn't have any concerns about the group because they're good people, and I knew they were going to work well together.
Yeah, you would have pre-selected, I guess, but still, it's still tricky, and sometimes with that kind of situation, it can be intimidating as far as like, oh man, this person is look at, they know this, they got that thing. And you said there's a lot of varied skills too. So I could see how that could also make it a bit of a challenge to recognize like, oh, they're really good at that thing that I'm not good at. And just, a little bit of discomfort that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I got to give a shout out to Renato Maloney. I don't know do you know Renato? He's a Berklee.
Not personally, no.
Okay. So Renato taught my capstone, and here's a guy who had to get out of in-class teaching. He had in-class on-campus obligations that week. Right. And he came out from Boston to California, but it was great because he, naturally had that skill set of a teacher, and so it was great to have him. And I intentionally put him on a different team than myself, and so. But he brought such a great. Everybody brought a great energy, really. But in particular, he was great because not only does he write and play and produce, but he just has a great. It takes a certain skill set, I think, to be a teacher, and a teacher, by definition, you're able to bring out the best in people through their insecurities and create an environment that encourages that.
Yeah, that's nice. And it's really, a lot of people that I've spoken to or read interviews with, when they work together and when they collaborate with someone for the first time, a lot of the initial stuff is just conversation, maybe going for a walk or having a meal together to kind of warm up that, we're in this together. We're kind of working together. Even in the band I play in with old friends now, we often start just hanging out, conversation, and sometimes things come up. And once in a while, that works its way into what we play. It becomes like, part of the jam. I'll like throw in like the lyrics, something we were talking about earlier, maybe to get a laugh or whatever it is. But just like we've kind of already explored this thing together, gotten a sense for where we all are in the moment. And it does make it a lot easier than just sort of like, all right, get your guitar, here we go. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Because it's an evolution, right? When you're creating anything, I think where you may have an idea of where you want to start, but where you end up at may be different, and that's often that's a function of the people involved and the nature of music, I think, as well. It's there needs to be structure, but the structure is there just to sort of encourage and facilitate the creativity. And I think, too, the structure of this particular retreat, because it wasn't strictly a songwriting or strictly a production retreat, it was really both. It was like everything you need to get from zero to a finished track. I think that was also helpful because everyone knew, okay, we really have about 2 days to write a finished product, because, we're going to get to the middle of the week and we're going to start, with some of the production, the tracking, and we really need to have everything, done by Friday night. And in fact, we ended everything with a dinner out Friday night, so it was really Friday afternoon. And I think that time constraint, it was helpful because people got right down to it, and there wasn't like, okay, the first day we're still arguing about what genre we're going to do.
Right.
Teams were able to get right to work, and it was long hours as well, and it wasn't by so much by design versus just the idea was we're going to get started, and then when we've run out of energy, then that's kind of when we're gonna end. So that was fun to see, and it was great to see. For me, it was great to see you've set up this environment, and it was great to see it just go from there and see these things that were being created without me, and again, it wasn't, not that it was all about me at all, but it was just, it's fun to sort of set up something and then you sort of like release, and you just see, gosh, this is really going great. We had 2 participants who had never met each other before, and by the end of the week, they had were already under contract with a third party who contacted one of them to do music for a movie. And, one was into film production and scoring, and the other one was a songwriter, singer. And together, they were on a team. They just worked great together, Mira Goto and Renato. And they really just clicked wonderfully, and it was amazing to me that in a course of just a few days, these new acquaintances had already started a bond now that is existing past the retreat. And Mira in particular, Mira is a great singer, songwriter, triple threat. Kind of does everything. And she, one of the speakers, which we can talk about a little more in a minute, but one of the speakers is my good friend, Mark Mancina, who's a composer, and he just got to know her really more at this dinner, the closing dinner Friday night, and was really looking for a live, for her sort of voice for a future song, future vocalist for a song. And the way Mark put it to me was that he had this whole roster of these classically trained singers, who had a certain vibe, but Mira's just got a great natural voice. And so anyway, the point of all of that is that there were some really great things that came out of this that were beyond just the retreat itself and what we were able to put together during the retreat. It was really the relationships and the connections that were really fulfilling for me to see.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it too. In that, I mean, this is like so much of what we do really is working with other people, building relationships, and finding out like who you gel with, who you vibe with, and to get that. I mean, if nothing else came of it, just to realize like, hey, that's a person like I'd love to work with again. I mean, that's the gift that keeps on giving, right? It just
Right.
comes up again and again.
Exactly. Yeah.
How did you decide how long to give each part of the process? And also, I guess, some people kind of combine all of these processes, right? Like you can kind of do your writing inside the DAW, for instance. And I would imagine like maybe some of the more like producer-minded people might be tempted to go right there in the beginning. So I'm just curious how you decide, or if you even did, maybe it was up to the groups, I don't know, but how long you give for each part of the stages, when you were going to go to the next part with like starting to track and all of that.
Yeah, that's a great point, because people write in different ways, and what I did was I had 3 different songwriting areas that were acoustically isolated from each other, and I really just gave the artists the notion that, hey, the goal is to come out with a song or something on paper, or at least something to work with by the end of, certainly no way later than the end of Wednesday. And however you get there is up to you. And even when we were tracking here in the studio, one team was in here, another team wasn't. And so there was certainly time to sort of refine things and even later in the week. But I and this is one of the great things about where I'm at, in that I'm not somebody who's, I've done this for 30 years. This is how you do it. This is how you get from point A to point B. I had much less experience than many of the participants who were, probably all the participants. And so I was able to just say, hey, look, how you get there is up to you. I'm not going to, dictate that, but here's the time blocks you have, and, use it however you need to and you see fit. And that seemed to work well. I did learn a lot as well, again, because this wasn't something that was planned and kind of grew organically. I surveyed the participants at the end to say, hey, what would you change? What could we, how could we do this better? And, and there was a lot of good that came out of that as well. But, having another workstation, so there were a lot of things that came out of that to extend that idea of creating the optimal space so nothing gets in the way of writing music. But I think most people, know how they function and, what their process is. But I also noted on that first day that, look, we're all going to be outside our comfort zones. These are people we don't know. Somebody may write different than you. The list of genres was crazy. We had so many different genres represented, and you may end up working on a track that's not in the genre that you usually write in, and just be open to trusting your team, and you're gonna create something that no one person could create on their own.
Right. Yeah, they give them that freedom, because I would imagine that it's probably a weird situation for everybody. We're here for a week and with people we don't really know yet. And we're, this kind of just, like I said, it's sort of like the fantasy that I think a lot of people have. It'd be great if we could go to this really nice place and didn't have to worry about anything and we just made music. But I don't know how often that's the reality. And everyone is a little bit thrown off probably by this. So there's a lot of creativity in just how to approach that on the individual level.
Right. Yeah, I think we're all we're all hungry for that, or many musicians are just hungry for that. We're in music because we like to create, and there's a lot of other things that are sort of necessary baggage that's associated with that. And again, I just wanted to create, my line to everybody is, hey, you just make it here. You make it here, and you'll have the space to create. You'll have a place to stay. You're gonna have food, and it was amazing to me how hungry people were for that. Not for the food, but for the experience. Well, for the food too. Some of them. Just kidding. But yeah, and it was somewhat artificial. There was. But it was artificial in a good way. It was a unique sort of, if you could imagine what would be the best scenario, and just trying my best to approximate that, to just get the most out of the participants. And so many of them, this was very fulfilling to me, is so many of the participants said to me, pulled me aside afterwards or even during the retreat and said, you don't know how much this means to me, that this is just what I needed at this point in my life, or I'm on this musical journey, but I've realized I need to get back to just the pure, unadulterated creation process. And it was about halfway through the week I realized, okay, people are really into this and they're enjoying it, and so my worst fear was alleviated in the sense that I felt like people were feeling like it was worth their while.
Mm-hmm. It's something you mentioned actually earlier before we started recording. You were talking about like just the love of music, the love of making it. And we can get caught up in the technicalities. You're setting up your gear and you're making sure your room's somewhat acoustically sound. And I mean, sometimes you're just up against these challenges that aren't going to get solved, and you're just going to have to settle on it. It can be really frustrating. And I've definitely gone through periods where I've found myself more stressed out about it than anything. And this seems like you're really trying to dive back into that a little bit. Just that love and enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah. Setting up ahead of time too was the month before was sort of my stress time, in the sense that I wanted to make sure I had all my mics and placements and routings and just mundane things, making sure that the headphones worked in the booth, and trying to anticipate how could, what hitches could come up. But also knowing, hey, hitches are going to come up, but I'm trying to minimize those as much as possible. Getting all of that out of the way was important to me, because I wanted to also participate and enjoy the event. That was sort of the point in the first place. I didn't want to be in a position where I was having to sort of, oversee everything and make sure, things were all coordinate. I wanted to be a full participant as well. So to the extent that that's possible, I think that it was achieved. It was a matter, though, of really getting as much setup as possible, as much preparation as possible to just make people comfortable.
I get the feeling this is the kind of thing that you probably wouldn't have planned to do from the scratch. Like you kind of like fell into it in a way through like the other event. I mean, sometimes that's just how interesting and cool things happen. Like, I think we always picture, there was this idea and this thing and we built it, and sometimes they kind of just tumble out of something else, and one thing starts to develop and grow into something new. And I could imagine that this was one of those things where if you would have started out with, I'm going to plan this thing, and you'd probably be like, nah, that's too much.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm not, event planning is not something that I aspire to do necessarily, but I didn't really look at it that way. I mean, in retrospect, there was a lot of that ahead of time, but really, I just looked at it as, setting up for success and setting things up to create this beautiful space where new friendships could be made, new connections could be made, positive energy. I think people just needed positive, to be in a bubble. There's so much going on in our world that's around negative energy, and the ability to kind of escape that for a period of time, I think, was refreshing for the artists, and it was something that I think that life sometimes gives you what you need and not what you necessarily want or think you want, and it was what I needed as well, in the sense that as this became more of a bigger deal, or it became apparent that this was going to be a bigger event, it pushed me outside my comfort zone a bit to reach out to some people to help me with it, in particular the speaker series. And the idea behind the speaker series was that, I like to sleep in if I can, that sort of thing. And I thought, okay, let's just pick a time that's not too early in the morning, but, reasonably early. So we started at 9, and, we had breakfast for everybody, and you could kind of come in and get your breakfast. And then we started each day with a short talk, and not an hour-long thing, but a 15-minute, 20-minute talk. And it was great to see how that ended up. You, I can't thank you enough. You were a wonderful participant in that, and the participants in the retreat really felt that your contributions and your sort of approach to music was very helpful, especially at that part in the week. I tried to outline the arc of the week and the arc of the speaker so that they were connected. So early in the week, I gave the first talk on the Monday where we got together, and again, a short talk on prosody, and then you came in and gave just a wonderful talk on the philosophy of making music, and in particular, I think you speak very well toward not getting stuck, and in particular, not getting stuck with perfectionism, and just also trusting the process, and leaving your ego behind, and ego and slash fear, because I think, like you mentioned, everyone is sort of a little, the chance for intimidation, or this person knows more than I do, or this person does this better than I do. You really set the tone to allow the first full day of writing to get off and running on the right note. So I can't thank you enough for doing that. That was wonderful.
That's great to hear, and it was fun talking to everybody. I could feel right away. I was like, oh, this is gonna be cool, like just the spirit of the room, and we did a little kind of conversation afterwards. But that sentiment, really, I think, playing with the band I'm playing with right now, we are at a point where we've all been making music forever, and together, some of it too. And we've all had the chance to be alone and do everything we want our way, all that kind of stuff. And it's so nice now, again, to go back and play with people and embrace what they bring to the table, and like to just be absolutely open to what they're bringing and know that they're the same way for you. So that you don't have to worry about if, like, good, I'm glad you play the bass better than me. I'm glad you're a better drummer than me, because that's a hole in my game that you're able to fill. And hopefully there's something I do, at least in a different way than you, that is at least interesting to spice up your own work. And sometimes we're so into music as like better than me, more talented, knows more theory. And it gets proven to me time and time again that that's not the most important thing. And it can be very helpful, of course, to have like technical skills and understanding of things. Sometimes it's great when you don't too, because then interesting things happen. You break rules you didn't know were there. And
Right.
It's just, it's cool to be comfortable with wherever you are on that spectrum, because there's value to every position. I've learned a ton from people of all abilities. Our Berklee class is the perfect example. I mean, there's all kinds of people in those classes, all kinds of levels. And there's a lot of times where I'm like, I can't believe you're not teaching the class. And I learned so much from so many different people. And having even just like some of the people that are straight up beginners using Ableton Live or sampling or whatever it is they're doing, they've never written a song before. It's really refreshing to see that perspective. You mentioned like your guitar player friend that is a really good guitarist, but just can't do it. I feel kind of lucky that when I first tried to write a song, I was young enough to not know that I didn't know what I was doing almost. And a lot of my influences were people that weren't known for technical prowess, like Nirvana was such a big influence for me when I first started playing. And you kind of got the feeling like Kurt Cobain was just sort of throwing his hands wherever they landed on the guitar. And that's part of what was amazing about him. Like, I don't know if he knew all the theory behind it, but it was freeing for me, at least, that, that impression that I had, at least at the time. Now you listen back, you're like, that's so genius. How did he do that? But it gave you the kind of like comfort to be okay with wherever you are on that journey. So I think that's what we got to embrace, like whatever sometimes it's just the energy you bring to the room. It's just your enthusiasm, your excitement. And you don't even have to play a note, but you'll change what happens in that room.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think we all can learn too from, everybody's got a unique journey, a unique message. They bring unique skills to the table. It's our speaker on Wednesday after you, again, is my buddy Mark Mancina, who is a lifetime musician. I mean, he grew up in Los Angeles and, did his time as piano man in bars and, playing nightly. And, he's gone on, he's won 3 Grammys and scored, numerous movies. He scored Moana and Lion King on Broadway, which is now, I believe, in its 23rd year, something like that. But anyway, the point is that he, it's great to hear a lifetime of perspective from someone like that, who, because you look and you say, how did he get to where he is? And he was gracious enough to host a tour of his studio and share his process and how he approaches writing music. And so for me personally, he's just been a wonderful friend and mentor in my life, as someone who who, at the same time, he has this amazing skill set and just has the level of music he writes and is just fantastic. It's great to see and hear that, he had to start somewhere as well. And it's a lot of these little steps along the way. So it was great to have him. Alan Silvestri was our speaker Thursday. He's had, he's scored everything. If you take a look at, like every movie I saw growing up, of course he's done all the Avengers here recently. And he's Back to the Future on Broadway is the next thing that is, it's his current project. But he was great too, because there was a question that came up during his talk, and he said, and I think he was quoting, I can't remember who the composer was he was quoting, but the thing was, hey, the advice was the three most important things, in composing. Number one, the work, doing the work. Number two, the work. Number three, the work. And it just... there's some truth to that too. And I think just area under the curve, the amount of time that you put in, you can't help but learn whether, you're going to have fast times, slow times. So it's the point of all this is it was great to learn from these amazing composers who've had just a lifetime of learning and seeing how they get there. I asked Alan, at a social event a couple weeks back, what do you do when you get stuck? How you wake up, you got something to write, and you get stuck. And he said, I don't get stuck anymore. I don't get stuck. And I thought about that a lot. How can you not get stuck? I feel like everybody gets stuck, but it's a matter of developing a skill set over time where your bag of tools is so vast that you're able to know how you're stuck. And, okay, I just need to apply this tool here to move in this direction. So anyway, I've gotten off on a little tangent, but again, there's so much to learn from everyone, and this retreat was no different. I learned so much from each participant, continue to learn, and in the way that you learn from your students, we all learn from each other, and I think being open to that is the first step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is, because all different perspectives are handy, and sometimes you miss a little piece along the way, and I feel lucky even just, I got a taste of that really early on in playing music while I was trying to teach my friend how to play some guitar chords so I could practice my pentatonic scales over that, and I taught him a couple power chords, and he went home, and the next day he came over and he was like, hey, I made this thing on the guitar, and he was like bending the power chords and then playing, I don't even know what scale he was in, what key. And I'm like looking at him and I'm like, these are all things you're not supposed to do. Like, I've learned this, and yet it sounds awesome. It's cool what you're playing. So like it just made me realize like, oh, that's, drop that attitude of you think you know anything and just, open your mind to that. Anybody can teach you something there.
That's right. I think if you look at if you were to plot out aptitude and experience, or maybe those are the wrong, but anyway, I think that initially you don't know anything, when you're starting out learning something, and then you learn and you feel like, okay, I know this now. But as you learn more, you realize, oh no, I don't know anything. I've still got a lot to learn. And I think it's getting to that third stage, which is really the exciting one, where you realize that, hey, I've got more to learn, and being, I think the people who achieve greatness, I think that a lot of them are curious and open and humble, and realize that, hey, they all know, look, I've got a talent, and but many of them, I think, realize that, hey, this is still interesting to me, and I still have things to learn, and I still have experiences, and I can learn from people, and I can learn from different people whose paths are different than mine, and what a great attitude to have, and what a great way to look at life. Life stays exciting and fresh that way.
Yeah, it's that third stage when you start to realize how much you don't know.
Right.
And it's kind of, that's what you discover nuance in there. You discover all the subtle, it's almost like you suddenly went from a magnifying glass to a microscope. And you're like, whoa, there's a lot more going on here than I realized.
Right. Exactly.
It's a really fun time. And I feel like that just keeps happening. There's more to this than meets the eye again. Just keep going. Keeps it fresh. How many different teams did you have?
Well, that was, up to the last minute I was shuffling around because, I'll say this, that there was a good balance between the males and the females. And the females were great at getting back to me in terms of whether they were coming or not, when they were going to be there. And the guys, for some reason, it was like pulling teeth. It was like up to the last minute. I'm going to make it. I can't. One of the guys got sick right before, and so didn't come. So I was really struggling with, team building was a key part of it. And I wanted to make sure that every team had a vocalist, every team had at least one instrumentalist, every team had at least a producer. And so in the end, we were just kind of right in between. At one point I had 4 teams, but, in the end we were... we got down to 2 or 3 teams, and I just, in the end, I could have gone either way, but I went with 2 teams. And it probably, in retrospect, I think it probably would have been better to go with the 3, just because I feel that there's a critical level where I think you can get too many cooks in the kitchen as well. And you want enough diversity of opinion to get that good creative mix in there, and you want to make sure you got all the skill sets covered. But at the same time, I think once you get above I think probably the ideal team is probably 3 people. And I think once you get to, 4 or 5, I think you run the risk of having 1 or 2 of the participants perhaps not contributing as much or getting as much out of it. It depends on the people as well. So
like factions that way too.
Yeah.
I'm playing
exactly.
with three-piece band, and we can't divide the conversation. You know what I mean? Like it's
right.
We're all talking, or 2 and 1, but there's not ever 2 separate conversations going on. So
that's right.
That's right. It is kind of a nice number.
When I do this again, it's something with a little more advanced planning. You can figure out, okay, I'm going to have this many producers. I'm going to have this many. You can sort of set up your retreat to have the right ratios and the right numbers. But that was that I think, and I've learned that from my own personal experience too. In the songwriting courses at Berklee, we had one of the best courses was the collaborative songwriting course, where you have a new team each week, and sometimes the team would just be 2 people. And I was on a team one time of 9 people, and they're both learning, and they both can be productive. And certainly if you look at the credits for pop songs now, you may have a list of many, many songwriters for a track. But in terms of this type of thing where you're going from the ground up with strangers, I think that 3 number is probably ideal because, again, I think with 3, every person feels vital and needed. But at the same time, you've got a big enough number where you can get a good mix and a good interaction between different parties and getting different opinions. Plus, it's kind of democratic too. If you want to move forward and you've got 2 people and one person, it's kind of easier to move forward that way as well.
Yeah, it's nice to have. Sometimes your energy wanes a little, and you have somebody there to kind of catch it or something. That's
right.
That's interesting though, how that could work. I never thought about it that way. It's in my situation that we never have 2 conversations going on with our band because it's only 3 people. And I've played in bigger bands, and sometimes that does happen a little bit where 2 people are discussing something and then I'm off goofing off with the other guy, and kind of missing it or something like that can go down.
Yeah, it's kind of a parallel to production as well, where you can only have so many voices, you can only have so many sounds, and if you put too few in, it can be a very sparse sounding. You don't have enough. If you've got just a human voice, a cappella, one voice, it's pretty sparse. 2, it could work, and but if you get to the point where you've got 10 different instruments, all playing at once, you're going to step on each other, and you're going to. So there's kind of that magic, number of tracks and sounds that make for a good production. Our Urko had this great. So Urko is a great sound engineer down in Los Angeles. He produced and engineered Kanye or Ye or Ye or Twitter persona non grata, whatever he's going by now. But anyway, he on his last album, which was I think it was Donda, but he was nominated for a Grammy for that, and Urko was great in talking about. We talked about, as an engineer, what do how do producers help you, and how do they get in their own way? And he had this great analogy, which again relates to this analogy of sort of the right number of things. And he said, he said, making music is like a sushi roll. You only have, there's only going to be so many ingredients. But the important thing isn't the number of ingredients, it's the quality of the ingredient. So you want each ingredient to be the best quality that you can. And if you start putting too many things in there, you lose the essence of each ingredient. You can't taste them all. You taste sort of a mix. Whereas if you have a few ingredients and each ingredient has its own sort of flavor and seduction to it, you're going to that's the key to success, is that you're going to have, but make sure each ingredient is the highest quality that ingredient can be.
Oh yeah, very true with sushi, right? Like you can't deal with low grade.
Right.
Yeah.
Truck stop.
Yeah, oh no.
Yeah.
And it's very true though. You kind of sound, like you said, 10 instruments just becomes like sound. It's not the separate parts. I find that in teaching as well, in a classroom. There's a certain number where there's individual people. There's Bob and Mary and whoever's in the class. At a certain number though, it's just a giant group. It's a mob.
Right.
And it's now you're not dealing with individuals anymore. It's like when if you walk through a busy city, it's just people. It's not individual. If you're walking down a quiet country road, you'll really notice the one person you pass. But in New York City, I mean, you could have a guy in a clown suit walk by and you don't even see it because it's just a sea of people there.
Right.
Yeah. Did you notice anything different in the approaches from the different groups? Any approaches that were interesting, or any interesting contrasts between the way they worked?
Well, it was interesting because being in one of the groups, I really only was privy to the internal machinations of our own group, my own group. And so I don't know. So I'm not sure how to even gauge that, because we would get together. I had this vision of we didn't actually implement this. It was on the schedule, but there was Wednesday night was supposed to be the night where the teams got together and just did a very rough and ready, performance of their song. Not it didn't have to be performance of a quality. It was just to get the general idea to the other team and have some team cross-feed feedback. And it ended up that where we were in the writing process, it was, I think people felt that it was a little more productive just to kind of continue on finishing up the writing instead of doing that. But I thought that would be a great, it was something that I kind of regretted not doing, because I think that will give, again, it's another learning experience. You're going to learn how the other team works, what they're working on, how they're thinking about it. From their perspective, you're getting a fresh set of ears hearing what you're doing, and that you may get some great advice on, hey, why don't you tweak this, or maybe, move this section here. Again, it was a way just to try to get the most out of the talent that we had there. And it also brings to mind the other way that I structured this is that I said that, look, anything we create, everybody who's here, everybody owns everything. So, if you've got a song that's your pet favorite song and you want to just get that last little polish on it, this is probably not the best place to work on it. It's I didn't want anything to get in the way that was non-musical. So that was something else. It was kind of like, we're all creating this. We're all here creating the energy. We're all contributing in different ways to everything that's happening. So, I nor anyone else has any ownership. And again, it was the point of the retreat was less about the final product, and it was more about the process and the connections that were made.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's a good way to approach it. I think that just cleans everything up real quick. You're not weighing it in. Did you run that chord change? How much is that worth?
Exactly. Exactly.
That's hard.
Talk about a vibe killer.
On.
That's gonna kill the vibe faster than anything else. And so I thought that was something ahead of time that I just laid out there, and so people came knowing that, and I think it was, there was nobody out in the group I was, but that can cause conflict, and people do, we all have our sort of scale of our value scale, right? What's more valuable, what's less valuable, and it all depends on perspective. And so anyway, I didn't want that to, that evil ether to permeate the air.
Yeah, it is a funny evil ether. It's pollutes the thing often very much.
Right.
Having that clear definition is important, because the last thing you want is that to come up and then just stall out the project. Or were all the groups able to finish something by the end?
Yes. Yes. Now the everybody got back to their busy lives, and so there's still mixing and you can always polish things and make things better. But yeah, we had each group had all of the elements that they needed and to have a final product. So I was very pleased with that, and that was also the intent that, like, look, we may not have all of the radio release quality ready, but we've got everything that we need to get it to that point by the time the week is done.
Yeah, that's an important thing too. Like, the process is great, of course, and going through it, and the low stakes, all important. But having that goal, that motivates, having that sort of a deadline kind of thing. And, we're trying to get to here is a good, it keeps things in perspective, I think, where you kind of, sometimes you just have to move forward, right? Like, you might have this idea that's some percentage of the way along, and sometimes you just have to say, all right, well, this is what we have to work with, and let's go with it. Instead of just forever trying to perfect it and mold it into whatever you might think it can be. I've really come to think about how when we're in that phase, when we're making something, that until we really commit on it, it's all of these possibilities of, it could be this, it could be that, and they're all, wow, imagine if it did this, and they're all just like fantasies, and they seem pretty great, but you have to ultimately choose one and make it a reality. And that's at the expense of all those other possibilities. You have to let them go, and some of them seem really nice, but in order to do it, to go through the process, you do have to sometimes move the process along, I guess. And there is an art to finishing and completing something. And if you don't do that enough, you have to develop that skill. And sometimes your ideas have to take a hit a little bit. You have to sacrifice them a little bit for the sake of finishing the project and moving along. But I think there is a greater good as far as actually having a body of work instead of a body of intangible fantasies.
Yeah, that's right. There's all these little deaths along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, all these little deaths along the way, right? So my son is went to film school down in Los Angeles, and he told me this phrase. I think it's "kill your babies." I don't know if you heard that phrase. Kill your darlings. Yeah, kill your darlings. Yeah, which of course means that you may have something you love, and there's a lot of parallels between making a great film and making great music, and that is that everything has to be in the end in service to the final product, in service to the movie. And you may have a great scene and a great favorite thing, but in the broader context, it's not moving the story forward in the right way. It's either unnecessary or it's but you may love that little nugget, but it's just not the place for it, and you have to be able to let that go. And I think that's true for music too. You have these. Like you say, what you envision and how you envision it all coming together. Sometimes as you look back, you say, well, I love this, but it's not really what's needed here, and you've got to let it go. So it is a skill that you have to develop over time, and it's certainly something that I'm still working on. Is allowing. It's this balance between having structure and knowing where you want to go and having a plan to go where you want to go. But then during the process, to be open to altering that course to fit where the song is leading you. And that may be a performance. There might be a performance by a vocalist that, I've changed my mind about how I'm going to frame this vocal, in the context of this song. And I love this synth sound. It was great when I opened up Serum, and, this was how I started the track, but you may end up, letting that go for something else that expresses the emotion in the way that another element is dictating or leading you to.
Mm-hmm. I've come to terms with that a little bit as best I can. I mean, I like to, when I'm working on something, I like to build it up at every stage. So like when the drums go down, it's like, this beat is great. You could just listen to it by itself. And then the bass comes in and you realize, okay, maybe we got to tone those drums down a little bit to make room for this. And every stage of the process, I'm trying to make it sound like this complete masterpiece, only to realize, like, if I want anything else in the song, I have to pull away a little bit. So to kind of like not polish it along the way constantly.
Right.
Because so often, like, then you get to your vocal or whatever the focal element is, and every other decision is now secondary because this is the thing. So getting to that point, getting like the vocal or at least the idea of the vocal down, suddenly everything else comes into focus much better. Doing it with a friend of mine recently, working on one of his songs, and once he sang, then I was like, oh, now I get what this guitar should do. And I had like a rough guitar and I'm listening to it against his voice and I'm like, yeah, there's cool things here and I like that riff, but it's playing when he's singing the line. Like it can't work. I have to have this guitar part kind of dance around his vocal. Otherwise it's just distracting. And that sometimes sucks because you're like, but I love that little riff there.
Right.
So it's like you can't really build it up until you kind of have that thing that you're framing, really. It's a good way to put it, like you're framing it. And yes, you got to kill those darlings. You got to say, hey, that riff, it's just not going to work here. It's not as important.
Right. And it's hard. It's not an easy process, and it's frustrating. And at times, I one of the things I've learned the most, I think, from being kind of inside the musical world versus and outside as a consumer and sort of my impressions as a kid. But I used to hear these recordings. We all have our favorite songs, and you'd hear them, and I just had this notion that, well, the way they got this great song is they just had all these talented people. They set them up, set up microphones, in front of the band, and the band did their thing, and there's the song. And you realize that, every note, every inflection, every, the arrangement, the groove, that's all been painstakingly crafted and through a process. It just doesn't happen from nothing to this final beautiful song and performance. There are things that are abandoned. There are things that are brought in, and there's much more intentionality behind music. Not that there's not a place for just riffing and coming up with something great. That happens, of course, but this notion that, well, it's just these talented people and it just flows from them naturally, like turning on a faucet. I don't think that's true for certainly most artists, and maybe any honest artist, is that there's work, and that work is hard and frustrating at times. One of the big, I think, subconscious perhaps inspirations for this retreat was Bo Burnham's Inside. You seen Bo? Have you seen this, Brian?
No, I haven't. You've told me to.
Loaded question. It's great, and I'll tell you what I love about it is that just the premise is Bo Burnham is someone I really, to be honest, wasn't that into before this special Inside. And Bo Burnham's a comedian, but a great musician and great songwriter. And he's kind of a genre chameleon. He can write in so many different genres, and it's funny and clever, but at the same time, it's good songwriting. I mean, it's sophisticated songwriting. And but he suffered from a lot of anxiety, and about 5-7 years ago, it was so crippling. He got stage fright, and he went from performing successfully to just not performing, and got help and got better. And right around a couple of years ago, he was set to go back out and perform because he had gotten to a better place. Well, that was early 2020, and then of course COVID hits, right? So what he did is he just put himself in a room. We were all in a room, right? We were all inside, but just tons of gear and just him, and camera, recording equipment, lighting, and he just wrote and he created. And the beauty of Inside, which won numerous awards, I think he won 3 Emmys for it. The beauty of it was that he captures that process so well of creation and being frustrated with it. And, sometimes it's going great. Other times it's just, what am I doing? Sort of thing. So it's great on so many levels, but, on the one level, it's, hey, what we all aspire to do, is it's kind of like what you picture when you're a little kid, and like, oh, wouldn't that be great? I'd be in a room, I'd have all this cool gear, and I just make this great thing, But as an adult, he was able to actually pull it off in an amazingly wonderful way. But at the same time, although you're witness to the product of what he's written, you also really see the process, and you just feel it. You feel it, not knowing when you're done. I should be done by now. I'm not even halfway. Anyway, it's definitely worth watching. And it was, to me, I think when I saw it, I just thought that's just so cool, and it I think planted a little seed, and wouldn't it be great to do something like that? But put a bunch of talented people together in a room with recording equipment, and so anyway, it's a great. I don't think I've ever seen anything that captures that journey of creating something with all of its warts and all, like Inside did.
Mm. I am excited to see it. It sounds like it might be a little painful too, but I do take comfort in that other people suffer through it as well.
Right.
Sorry, everyone else that also does, but it is, I think even what you said about one of the speakers, was it Mark Mancina maybe? About
Mancina?
Doesn't get stuck. Mancina, I'm sorry. He doesn't.
No, that was Alan Silvestri said he doesn't get stuck.
He said,
yeah.
Okay, so,
yeah.
He might be a superhuman case, looking at some of the things he's done, but I think there's also, I don't know, I'm obviously reading into this because I didn't have this conversation or hear it, but there's this kind of just pushing through that you have to do sometimes, that where you're there, this is what happens. This is the part where I question my entire life. This is when I realized that there's a lot of ways you can look at what I'm doing as a completely frivolous, nonsensical waste of time. But it happens, and here we are, and we just keep driving through it. This is the rainy part of the journey, and I might come out a little messed up, and this thing might not be what it, in my imagination, could be. But you just go anyway, and I don't really. That's the closest thing I've ever heard to anyone say they've got it figured out. They don't get stuck,
right?
But I get the feeling there might be a little more behind that, because it does really seem like there. I haven't really found anyone that's been like, man, it's pretty easy.
Yeah,
I've got it.
And yeah, not to do that comment a disservice at all. It was, that's sort of the boiled down
Right.
punchline of it. But it was coming from a place, that it was coming from a very, I'm at a loss for words, but let's put it this way. The way I took it, and I think the way it was intended, was that it is, you turn a macro stuck into a micro stuck. And I think that, in other words, when you're, let's take my guitar writing buddy, you try to write a song, you're stuck, and, you give up because you don't have any tools to navigate the next step in that process at one extreme. And then as you gather more knowledge and more understanding of how music works and what doesn't, I think you amass, tools along the way. And maybe with the first couple tools, you get stuck and it takes you a little while to get unstuck, but you find your way. And eventually you're able to decrease that time period from getting stuck to getting unstuck as a function of the experience you've had in songwriting and composing and the number of tools you have and just an understanding for why you're stuck. Sometimes we're stuck just because we're tired. We're not in the right headspace, right? And just realizing that is helpful. And I think also, too, just like driving a car, if you're driving a car, first time you drive and get stuck in the mud, you're probably the next time as you approach something that looks like a mud puddle, you may alter your course a little bit to prevent getting stuck. That I think that really was to me, the comment was inspiring and not frustrating. It wasn't like, I could never be at that level. It was more of an encouragement that the more you do this, the easier it gets, and you get to do more of the fun stuff and less of the pulling your hair out.
Yeah, okay, I see that. I think you run into those things inevitably, and I could see like, oh well, this is what I did last time. This is a way, and sometimes I find myself, rather than getting stuck and stopping, saying, well, I could do this, and let's just put that down for now. Maybe it's just a placeholder even. And after a while, it becomes, you just get used to it. But, or maybe you change it, but whatever. But like you kind of put something there so you can keep going, so you can keep moving.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like leave the car stuck in the mud for now. We're going to get out our bike, off of the top of the truck because we need to get in our mountain biking anyway. And, and you go along and, you'll get you'll maybe get the truck towed, the next day. And then you come out the next day and the mud's dried up and you just drive right out, So sometimes it is just, but that's a skill too, right? It's all of a skill of knowing, what, like you said, what options do I have and what things, and I think, again, that's also a freeing attitude to have. Instead of like, I have to solve this now in the best possible fashion, you say, okay, I'm going to put something here as a placeholder and move on, and you always come back to it. And oftentimes you come back and listen. I've been so surprised both ways, where sometimes, I'll listen to something and I'm just thinking, this is just not coming together, and I'll give it a break, I'll come back. And it sounds great the next day. And other times I'll think, I got this mix just right. And you'll come back and, oh my gosh, this, the hi-hat's too loud, whatever. It's I think the other thing to keep in mind is that we're all sort of existing in the here and now. And just because you feel a certain way now, and this goes beyond music, this is just kind of life philosophy, that, you get this feeling sometimes that when you're in a certain emotional state that well, this is me now, and subconsciously you're feeling like this is how it's always going to be. This is never going to, and you realize, okay, just because I feel this way now doesn't mean I'm going to feel this way tomorrow. And so, and again, I'm not trying to lobby for, these are different procrastination tools. Hit a rut in the road, just stop. But at the same time, I think that the less mental energy we spend on that sort of thing, feeling like, this is just not working. It's sort of reframing how we're thinking about things into like, okay, this is an obstacle, but let's, what are the good things we can do, with this track from here.
Yeah, not identifying too much with those thoughts of like, I'm stuck, I can't do this, and that stuff doesn't last. I mean, any emotional state you've ever had in your life has passed, right? So
that's right.
They've all passed.
That's right.
But I'm working on a few songs right now, and I'm at a point with one song where I really just need to get a few more lyrics on a verse, and I think where I'm going next is I'm just going to move on to something. There's other things I got to work on. I'm going to leave that car in the mud for now. And hopefully that'll, I'll keep it on my mind, but it's not there yet. So rather than sitting there and really just trying to hammer it out, because it's not the only thing that's left at this point, move on. Maybe sometimes these things come to you when you're not looking for it. The line comes to you, like, oh, there it is. Okay, that's how it can go. But if you got the pen in your hand and you're like, I gotta make these things fit, sometimes you can't force it. But to have an alternative is good. So like, okay, well, this isn't happening right now, but we can still make some progress on another area.
How do you know when, the danger is like you accumulate this whole library of 70% done songs or 80% done songs, right? So there's still this question of, okay, when do you, there's always this question of going back and working on something that, working on one of these 70% done things versus, creating something new. And either extreme can be a pitfall, right? You could stay on one track until you beat it to death and you just never get to the end, or you're always moving on to something else, and there again you're never getting to the end of things. And I think the question of like when are you done? Number one, when is it done? And the second too is when do you feel like, okay, maybe this, because I'm sure you have tracks. We all have tracks that, you just never been able to revive. And, when do you realize that? No?
Finished them all.
Finished every one.
Yeah, of course. And that's really what I'm doing right now with these songs. They're like from January, the little January challenge to make a new thing every day. Most of them are January songs that in that one day got about 70-80% done. And they're kind of similar vibes. So I'm like, I gotta do this because January's coming again. And I really can't imagine sitting on another like 30 ideas. So I just have to get it done. And I want to, I want to get this into a collection. And I've got probably like 15 of these ideas. I don't know if they'll all make the cut, but I'm going to give them all a shake, and I'm going to work on them until they aren't really moving significantly forward. So I kind of like hit a funny spot where all the they're like rock and roll type songs, but they have like drum machine drums. And I started overdubbing the cymbals and hi-hats the other day. I was like, this is nice. It gives it kind of a more of a human feel, and they sound better than the samples. And then I was kind of like, what if I played the drums too over this? And then I was like, no, like I'm not doing that. For one, I kind of like the vibe of the electronic drums, and if I go down that road, now I'm changing everything completely. So
Right.
it's like, no, that gives me something to look forward to, right, for the next thing. So
Yeah,
it gives me a little
right.
motivation. Like, I want to finish this shit so I can do some new stuff.
Yes.
And I'm like clearing the slate, you know.
Right.
If I don't do this, then I'm gonna have just too much stuff. I'm gonna drown. I'm probably gonna have to quit. You know, so I'm just gonna have. It's gonna just be awful. So it's kind of a part of the motivation is to get to the new thing. One of the nice things about coming back to these songs is that they really only kind of got worked on one night. So they're not, they're not, I'm not so sick of them yet, or I didn't see them all to completion. So they all kind of have a similar structure and similar instruments going on. So I think what I'm doing with like one of them, I can then apply methodically to the rest of them. And I'll get them as good as I can. And I'm kind of okay with them in their like demo-y state too. So I'm not going to try to over polish them.
Yeah.
There's like a vibe, you know, like none of them are perfect, but when I put them all on and just like listen to the collection, I'm like, this has like there's something about it I like. There's a cool feeling. So now if I do some of these other like ideas that maybe might technically improve them, I'm going to change the whole vibe.
Right.
So I'm trying to
I think that's the key. You know, there's so many things you said just now that are so like gold, you know. I think one of them is that the lo-fi thing is great. And, you know, you listen to music that there's songs that I remember growing up that are just perfect songs in my mind. They're just great songs. But if you go back and listen to those, there are errors in there. You know, there are wrong notes occasionally you hear. You know, this is back when they had to edit things, of course, by cutting tape. And so the point is that, you know, some of them like the mix is a little, you know, darker. There's mud. You know, you could list everything, but I don't perceive those songs as anything but perfect, even though there are these things that you could say, well, you know, you could have done this a little better. It doesn't detract from the whole. You know, these little imperfections don't detract from the whole. And I think it's very easy when we're writing and producing to get down these rabbit holes of, you know, we hear our same song over and over, and like you say, you start to get sick of it, and so you start to think of how can I improve it. And for someone who's listening for the first time, they're not gonna notice the little polish you put on the one tiny part of the bumper in the same way that you are at that, you know, 100th listen or whatever it is. So I think that's really a key point. And the other thing you said about is using it as a reward, finishing a track to use a reward to work on new music is something that I think that's in the end, I think the perfect solution, because you know, a way it was put to me by another songwriter was that, you know, you're just always trying to move forward and write then, like, you know, you did this song, finish this song and make the next one better. Mm-hmm. You know, at some point you can get stuck making your existing song better, and you're always in that. It's like trying to make your golf swing better before you go out and, you know, actually play around. It's like, I'm going to go out there once this golf swing is perfected. Well, you can spend a lifetime working on that, you know, versus, hey, just get out there and play, you know, some rounds of golf, and you're naturally going to get better through the process, even though you're going to make mistakes along the way. And so for me, that's my key struggle is, again, it's that letting go of the perfectionism and letting, you know, allowing yourself to experiment, make mistakes, learn, and it's very freeing to get to that point, because then now you can move forward, and you're always going to be, making new music is always just right around the corner, instead of like, well, someday when I finish this, polishing this car, the inside of the tailpipe, so that the exhaust sounds good when it comes out, it's like, it doesn't matter at all, you're wasting your time. So, but it's, and I think again, that's what experience brings you to. You realize like what's distracting, what needs to be corrected in a track, and what's really just diminishing returns, kind of going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to keep the vibe. Like there is a vibe they all have in common. So I want to keep that going. And I noticed actually in one of the songs, and I've listened to it a bunch of times, like in the car, trying to get a sense of what songs I want to work on. There's this, it's like kind of like just palm mutey guitars, like almost like punk rocky kind of thing. Eighth notes, and on the bass, I realized for like 4 bars on one of these songs, I just hit the wrong note. I was like a half step off. I didn't ever hear it until I opened up the session and looked, and I was like, whoa, what the hell was that? But it just kind of made me say like, okay, so the vibe is the thing here, because that was like, that's going to have to get fixed,
Right.
But somehow I managed to listen to that song like a number of times over the since January, and never heard that one, like the entire like 4 bars that chord plays, I'm off by a half step on the bass. Like I don't know how I just missed it, and I don't know how I didn't notice. Even when playing it, like how did that make it in?
Right.
But it did. And sometimes with the January thing, you're working so fast because you don't have any time. You're trying to finish something, and you don't even have time to decide if you like what you're doing. And I love that because it's just like, okay, that's the beat, that's the guitar chords, that's the synth sound. And sometimes what starts to happen is, I think like we all have some sort of taste in music, right? So you kind of apply your taste and you start to do nice things.
Right.
And there's a little trust. It's a leap of faith, but
yeah. But if it sounds good to you, it's going to sound good to somebody else. That's the other thing.
If I can,
you don't have to try to guess what is going to sound good to my listener, because I think that's where, and whether you're talking about trying to emulate someone else's sound or vibe, if you feel it, that's great. But I think that in the end, we all have our own sensibilities and our own sort of mix, internal, chemical mix of what the magic of music is. And I think in the end, it's if it sounds good to you and you enjoy listening to your own music, you're going to have an audience that connects with it as well.
Maybe. I mean, I'm under no delusions anymore. I've done this enough. Like, no one is going to enjoy it as much as I'm going to. Like, that's just going to be it. Like, I play for people, they might like it, or played it for a friend the other day. He really didn't even say anything. He was smiling, but I don't really know what he thought.
Yeah.
If I can be driving in my car and like feeling good, while it's going, I mean, that's really it. No one else is going to care as much as I do. And this is like maybe like the positive way of realizing how like pointless everything we do is. You know what I mean? You can kind of look at the stars for 10 minutes and then just be like, what is the point of anything?
Right.
But in this way, it's maybe a healthy way to go about it. If I can put it on my car and like be like, yeah, rock and roll, this is fun.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we're all just a blink of the eye here in the span of the universe, and it's the time we've got here is valuable and precious, and you want to enjoy what you're doing when you're doing it,
Yeah.
And I think in the end, yeah, you're right. If you are enjoying your music, then you've won. You've created a successful song. But you're not going to convince me that nobody has your musical taste. I mean, if you like it, others are, maybe not everyone, but, well, certainly not everyone, but there's going to be, it's kind of like the love languages, right? So there's this book, The Love Languages. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically it's that, look, we all need love and we all express love and we all like to receive love, but we have different languages that we do that in, and we might not connect with our partners if we don't understand that. We could think that, hey, I'm doing all these things or saying all these things that are showing love, but if if I'm speaking a language that's not being received by your partner because they have a different set of love languages, you might miss each other in that way. That communication might break down. I think the same is true for music too. I think that there are certain, whether it's genres or styles or production techniques, I think that there are certain things that, I love like delays and heavy reverb and sort of a washed out sound sometimes. And that's not everybody's sound. And, but it creates a certain world for me that I connect with. And I think that's okay. I think it's viva la difference, right?
Yeah. It's a good way to think about it too. Because I think you are right. I think I've found this through making my packs. My guiding light is always if it's something I want, then maybe someone else wants it too, and if not, at least I have it. And
right.
And there's less, in making like a sample pack or an instrument out of some weird sounds, and there's less at stake, I guess.
Right.
When you put out your song, it's like your work of art. But I spend just as much time making packs as I do making songs. So there's really it's funny that I would see it any different, but that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to give myself a kick and just make something that I think is fun. And yeah, you're probably right. If I can enjoy it, there might be someone else, but I've also come to terms with, most people probably won't ever, those people will never hear it anyway. and most people will probably get more of a kick out of like a picture I post of my dog than anything I ever create.
Well, I don't know. Maybe, but but that is the,
but it's a freeing thing. I'm saying I'm not saying it in a negative way. I'm just saying so the hell with it. I might as well just, what? If this weird thing I'm doing is amusing me enough, then.
But lowering the stakes like that, I think, is a great pathway to creating your best work, where you feel like, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this. There's this. I'll use a swimming analogy. One of my coaches at one point, had this phrase that was, relaxed at top speed. That was his reminder always: relaxed at top speed. And what the idea is that. There's an inverted U of arousal and performance that's been showed across all different types of activities, which, again, the inverted U is that if you're looking for peak performance, you can be under aroused, you can be, asleep or sleepy, and you're not going to perform at your best. But at the other end of the extreme, if you're too amped up and you're too hyped up and you're carrying, you're just at that really extreme end of arousal and anxiety, you're not going to produce, your performance is falling off there as well, negative. So the sweet spot is sort of in that middle part where you're focused, you're aware, you're present, you're there, but you're not too amped up or you're not caring too much about it. And so, and that's sort of captured in that phrase, relaxed at top speed. It just means that when you're trying to go your fastest, you just always want to be relaxed. You always want to, you're going your fastest, but you want to stay relaxed because that's when truly are you're at your fastest. So, I think that's what you've hit on. I think that's the key is that, you do what makes you happy and what feels good to you. But I think, getting songs out there and getting an audience to listen is a whole other, endeavor, right? But I think when it comes down to how can, Brian Funk or how can Matt Jones create the best art that they are capable of in a certain moment, I think that there's an element of that. I think if I sat down and said, I have to write a great song, I think it's going to be I think any songwriter, you even look at Paul Simon, you can't sit down the best songwriters and say, okay, I want you in the next, hour to write me a great song. A classic and all time. You can't do it. It's a matter of too many variables. But I think one of the best variables that you can control is just your own attitude toward the process, and lowering the stakes sometimes is a good exercise, because I think we tend to be on that one end of the arousal curve and not the other in general.
Yeah, and swimming too, right? Like there's an analogy to be had there as far as like the difference between swimming and drowning. Like what you're actually doing with your body. Where,
right.
Like if you're fighting the water and you're,
yes.
But like swimming is so much like smoother than you're almost doing the same thing, but it's just a relaxed state. Like if you're treading water compared to if you're sinking, it's weird how it's almost less. It's like
yes, that's absolutely. It's less is more for sure. Yeah. Is that there are a lot of, and it's kind of an analogous to getting out of your own way. It's you. It may feel like when you're drowning that all the thrashing is helping you. All that effort is going toward, moving or keeping your head above water. It can be counterproductive, and just slowing down and relaxing is often a better way to go.
So I've read Finding Ultra by Rich Roll, I believe. Rich Roll is ultra marathon runner, kind of like guy who was something like 40 years old and out of breath when he climbed the stairs and couldn't play with his kids. He's like, changed his life basically to become an ultra marathon runner. But one of his trainers was having him with the heart rate monitor. The goal was to keep his heart rate low and just put as much effort as you can in, but don't ever go above this. So that he's just kind of like doing this slow thing, and he knows he could do more, and the temptation is let's push it. But what it actually did for him was give him a faster and faster pace he could go at with his heart staying at that low rate. So he's like more relaxed at top speed, like you said. And it's something I've been playing around with a little bit when I go for my jogs. I'm not trying to run even any kind of marathon, just get some exercise in, but doing that like really slow run,
right?
Trying to keep it low it's interesting. It's what it does. Then you've kind of like built up this like ability to kind of almost like go forever. Yeah,
there's a song in there somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Relaxed at top speed.
Yeah. It would work, I think.
Yeah, right.
Maybe the next retreat.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, we're going to have to definitely have you. I'm going to be sure to schedule it during the summer. So, I'm cutting down on the dishwashing and the laundry excuses for you, so that
It sounds like a blast. I mean, it's really cool that you did it and you put it together and you assembled a lot of people, and you guys all wrote like a thank you card, and it's really, it's very heartfelt, just even though it comes through in the paper, and just doing that meeting with you guys on only the second day, it already felt like something cool is going to happen. So I think it's an awesome thing you did. And I think there's a kind of a lesson too in that sometimes you almost have to get yourself in over your head a little bit so that you can sort of rise to the occasion. And it seemed like that's what happened in this thing here.
Well, Brian, I'm very grateful for your help with it, and I can't emphasize enough how you kind of set the tone in just the right way to I couldn't have handpicked a better, well, I did handpick the best person to kick it off. Again, I'm grateful, and it wouldn't have been the same without your help.
Thank you. That was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun, and I'm really honored to be included amongst some of these names you got here. Great. Well, maybe we'll wrap this up then. It's been awesome talking to you again, and been looking forward to it, and glad we got a chance to do it. And thank you for doing this. It sounds like a lot of people got a lot out of it, including you and me as well. So I bet people listening will be inspired by a lot of what you had to say too.
Well, thank you, Brian. Thanks again for having me.
My pleasure. And thank you for listening to the Music Production Podcast. Have a great day.